Hello there, and welcome back to another night of Reggie Sleep Out Live. Thanks for tuning in and joining us again for our nightly live stream. We are going to be here every night at 7 p.m. for the rest of the weekend. We're here a little early this week just to kind of accommodate the schedule for the rest of our programming. So if you're tuning in, be sure to check out YSS Let's Talk later on at 7 p.m. on all of our channels. But tonight, I am joined by Toby O'Berry, our director again. How's it going, Toby?
Going well.
And our special guest, Sam Kemp Carlin, our mental health therapist here at IHYC. How are you doing, Samantha?
I'm doing great. Nice to be here.
Excellent. So for the folks at home, Samantha, if you want to just introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what you do here at IHYC, and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Blake. Well, I'm a licensed mental health counselor and LMHC here in the state of Iowa, and I have been with YSS since December of 2015, and I've been working at Iowa Homeless Youth Centers out of our downtown location at 612 Locust since August of 2016 when I graduated from college. So, from graduate school. So pretty much my entire mental health therapy career has been at Iowa Homeless Youth Centers, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It's been a great experience and a great place to work.
I remember when the behavioral health director at the time, we were looking for a therapist in Des Moines, and working at the Youth Opportunity Center and with youth, it's a unique subpopulation and takes a special kind of skill set. And he was like, I have this perfect therapist in mind that I think would be great. And I'm like, I don't know. And he was definitely right.
Yeah, it turns out.
You've been an amazing addition to the team. So I'm happy that you like it because you do a lot of good work with our youth.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we are so lucky to have you. And, being here for a while, you've been exposed to Reggie Sleep Out. I don't know if you want to tell the folks at home just a little bit about your experience with the fundraiser and the things you've seen over the years.
Yeah, well, I think one of the greatest things that I've seen at Reggie Sleep Out is how excited some of our youth get for participating and engaging with it, because they, even if they are still accessing our services and still needing support from us, they know how important it is to give back to those who may be in a more difficult situation than they are. And so to me, that's really my favorite part of Reggie's every year, is to see our youth come out and really try to be supportive and engaged, and also just be around to be examples to the people who participate of youth who have been in these difficult situations, and can kind of answer some of their questions, or kind of just be kind of that model of, this is what your donations and your time and everything is going towards. So, folks like these youth can move forward in their lives.
Yes, and that is a perfect transition into what we're going to talk about next year. Toby, I know you've got a little bit of some numbers that you want to show us here to show the impact of how money goes every night. And so maybe talk a little bit about what $400 looks like.
Yeah, so tonight, just wanted to kind of share that, making an impact, raising funds for Reggie Sleep Out. As you remember, 100% of the proceeds go directly back to youth services. And that first impact is that $400 will provide vital documents for over 16 youth in our program. So what vital documents are you think about your birth certificate, a copy of your driver's license, as well as just a lot of Social Security cards, all these vital documents that most of our youth don't have in possession the time that they have to leave their home or as they become homeless. So vital documents play a key component into the services that we provide to homeless youth. So that $400 can help us provide 16 youth with vital documents. The second item, $400, allows our aftercare team, which is kind of trying to be innovative. A lot of our youth are really busy. It's hard to meet with youth from time to time. Some youth maybe don't want to meet with their advocate as much. And so we're able to utilize incentive components with funds that we raise to be able to pay for youth to have lunch. So we can sit down, the youth can have some food. We can kind of catch them in the moment. meet somewhere, maybe at a coffee shop, or when the pandemic wasn't going on, we'd be at other restaurants. But that $400 would allow us to provide 20 lunches to youth in our aftercare team. And then the third item is kind of an interesting one, but it's really a safety component. So what that is, for our overnight and our emergency bed program, we have a third-party monitor the fire alarm system. So in case power goes out or something happens, a third party is able to notify the fire department and bring help if we need it. And so that $400 will provide that third-party fire alarm monitoring for 2 months. So those are kind of 3 different examples of how $400 can create an impact at our agency.
Yeah, if you look at just, how simple we're trying to meet our youth where they're at in life, and every day, if that means just going out to lunch and trying to, accommodate their time, or, get connected any way we can, that little bit of money can make them go a long way. So,
Yep.
Thank you, Toby.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue to take a look at some of the really cool ideas and setups that you guys have had for your sleep outs over the course of the week. And we encourage everybody at home to go ahead and try and share any photos you have, any videos, anything really cool that you've been doing with your sleep out. You want to go ahead and throw up the hashtag RSO at home, and we will go ahead and share any of those right here on our live stream. And a couple lucky winners will be receiving a lawn chair that's branded with Reggie Sleep Out on it. Great for tailgating, going to soccer practice, whatever the deal is. So we've got a couple teed up here tonight. So this is Emma, one of our former employees and a great advocate for Reggie Sleep Out.
Yep.
Here's a little throwback of one of years past. And a familiar face for some of you who've been tuning in. This is Libby, our board president, and she just did her sleep out over the weekend, pulled out the tent, and had a great experience.
It's a good looking tent.
Very warm in the sleeping bag. And then, of course, here Elizabeth, one of our dedicated employees who got the whole family together. So did some social distance camping, and you'll see they brought out the signs, brought in the dog, made a whole experience out of it. So very cool. So again, yeah, share your photos, tag our page, or use that hashtag RSO at home throughout the week, and then we can share what you're doing at home. But we'll go ahead. Every night we try and take a look at the impact that we make here at IHYC and try and boil it down to the numbers. Learn a little bit more about what that impact looks like. And Toby, I know you've got a few things that you wanted to highlight tonight for us.
Yeah, and some of these items are trying to have people understand a little bit about the process of youth work and working with homeless youth, working with federal funders. And so in this segment of Did You Know? Now, the first one is talking about the annual point in time, which is called the PIT. And so it's a one time a year minimum. Our community, so Des Moines and Polk County, does a point in time twice a year, winter and summer. And that's where community stakeholders, volunteers, nonprofits go out into the community for 24 hours and provide trying to get an accurate count of the number of homeless individuals on that one specific night that are in your community. And this point in time, or the PIT count, is a HUD requirement, Housing and Urban Development, and it occurs nationally in every community that is funded by HUD. So that point in time, it's really a challenge to do an accurate point in time, specifically for homeless youth who are very difficult to identify and find, or maybe are doubled up or precariously housed. And so we have to try to have some form of numbers to do a count, But I will say that point in time count, it under reflects the impact of the number of youth that we serve in our community. But it's the best we got, and it's a way to standardize kind of the situation of homelessness across the entire nation. So if you hear the PIT or the point in time, that's a homeless count that happens across the nation and is a mandate of HUD. And then the second item is really touching on the issue of the LGBTQ community and the higher representation among youth that are homeless that also identify as being gay. And so 30 to 40% of youth nationally that are homeless identify as LGBTQ, and that's almost double the just national baseline average of a subpopulation. So it's a much stronger correlation of someone who identifies as LGBTQ and an elevated risk for homelessness. And it's something that our community needs to understand and recognize and be aware. And then that third stat, which goes along with the second one, is that 68% of homeless youth nationally that identify as LGBTQ have experienced family rejection. And so that is a very powerful statistic, which is basically saying that the family that individual was born into or is growing up in rejected them for some form or manner or reason based on how they identify and express themselves. And so it's something that I think the participants of Reggie Sleep Out and just the community needs to understand as a whole, that we have a lot of youth that identify as LGBTQ, and we need to support them the best way that we can. And a lot of time they're not getting the support in their immediate family unit. And it's one of the reasons why our agency, you can see the picture there of our Youth Opportunity Center. We created this space to be mindful of the high number of youth that identified as being gay in our service area. And so we have gender neutral restrooms. We have showers that are single stalled. We have safe space identification. We ask preferred pronouns of our youth when they come in and respond to the pronouns that they desire. And it's just having our staff trained to meet the needs of youth that are LGBTQ. And some of these statistics are pretty hard to understand. But when you see our youth that come through the door, they're just looking for a safe place, and our Youth Opportunity Center provides that.
Yeah, when you just look at it, just really boils down to identity and how important it is to feel recognized as who you are, and really try and put that at the core of any interaction we're having with our youth. And that being said, that's why we've designed that space to be so accommodating and safe place for anyone who enters.
I think it's been amazing to see our staff try to meet youth where they're at. Some of our youth are kind of still deciding or figuring out their pronouns or how they want to be referred. So we literally have staff meetings, and we'll what are they preferring this week, and then we respond and make sure that the staff know, and then maybe next week they change their mind, and so we address that because we're trying to meet them where they're at in their life. And so instead of just arbitrarily picking, you're just asking someone to share that information with you, and then you respect what they respond with. So it seems straightforward, but it is something that is very important to have a safe space and have staff trained to be able to provide services for the LGBTQ community. Absolutely.
Yeah, and Sam, I know you're in the heat of that with all the meetings and talking with our youth every day. So, so looking at coming up here, we'll tease. I know maybe there's some folks at home that have questions about this or any other topic, and now's a great opportunity if you're tuning in. If you wanted to shoot any of those questions you have in the comments section, Sam is going to have an opportunity in just a few minutes here, and we'll try and answer any of those questions you have. So just having a little conversation here, a little Q&A. First of all, thanks for coming on here, Sam. It's really great to have someone who's an expert in your field come along.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So we'll start off, maybe tell us a little bit about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Sure, that's a great place to start. So When we talk about usually what happens in the therapy office, like when folks who might be tuning in today are thinking about therapy, a lot of the things that you might be thinking of is dealing with things like relationships or meeting some of the bigger goals in your life, like becoming the best self that you can be. And those are all goals that our youth have, but before we can really address some of those higher level needs, we really have to look at the bottom of the pyramid of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so what we see when we look at this, and those of you who took psychology in college or graduate school find this familiar, but our very basic needs, our most important needs that we need to have met are our physiological needs. And so that's being able to breathe, having access to food and water, having a safe place to sleep and clean clothes to wear, and again, being able to get good sleep. And so for our youth who are homeless or precariously housed, like these needs are not being met on a regular basis for them. So when they come in to meet with us, we're not necessarily focusing first on going through their entire trauma history or helping them figure out how to get along better with people. Sometimes the very first thing that I have to do as a therapist is say, okay, do you have a safe place to stay tonight? And if you don't, how can I help you and brainstorm with maybe some of our other staff to make sure that you have a safe place to stay? And the same goes for things like substance use, right? Like if you don't have a safe place to stay every night, if you don't know where your next hot meal is going to come from, I'm not going to sit down and talk to you about why you need to stop using substances. I'm going to start by saying, how can I get you connected with places in the community where you can get those very basic needs met? And once we've met those very basic needs, then we can move higher up that hierarchy and start focusing on some of those other things, like getting a job and going back to school and getting along with others and having healthy relationships, not just with people, but with substances and things like that. So a really important part of being a therapist in the setting that I'm in at IHYC at 612 is having that team of other folks who are able to help connect the folks who come and meet with me to other resources and services that they might need. And because of that, I don't have to be an expert at everything. I can just be an expert at being a therapist and allow my teammates to help me help the clients access those other needs that they may have. And that's another great thing about like our housing first model is we're focused on stabilizing them and getting them in to stable, reliable housing so that they can focus on some of those higher level needs that we saw in that pyramid. So that's a really important part of being able to help these youth with mental health and get their lives going in the direction that they want to go.
Yeah, you'll hear from many of our staff that phrase of, we try to meet our youth where they're at in life. And that's exactly what we're talking about when we're showing that Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah. I will say, like, part of being a therapist is providing that unconditional positive regard, right? Like providing that environment for somebody where they can feel that genuineness and they can know that they're in a safe space that's free of judgment. And another really great thing about working where I do is I know that I'm not the only one who's providing that unconditional positive regard, but every single other coworker that I have is also providing that unconditional positive regard. And it makes it so much easier to help these youth like access the services they need and get those relationships going so that they can be successful.
Yeah, that positivity really helps with building trust. When you're going back every day, you know that you can trust this adult. And that's really important too when you look at a lot of the different barriers that someone who's experiencing homelessness at this age in life might have. What are some of those barriers that some of our clients might have with just accessing therapy services?
Sure. So there's a lot of barriers to engagement that might arise for some of our clients. And one of those big barriers is just not knowing what services are available or even what services might be helpful for them. Other youth might be embarrassed to seek out help from somebody. They might think, it's really important to me to make it on my own and to do this by myself, or they might have some cultural kind of values that tell them that like you need to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and not ask for help or get a handout from someone else. A lot of our youth have gone through the system in terms of foster care and other placements, and they might have not had very positive experiences with therapy. In fact, they might have been forced to attend therapy as children and young adults. And so the idea of coming to therapy as an adult can be scary because they don't know exactly what to expect. Other barriers can be lack of transportation, not able to get to the places where therapy is provided. If they don't have insurance, or they have insurance but the copays are very high, they might feel like they're not able to afford to get this care. They might also have concerns that what they share with a therapist will be reported to a social worker or a probation officer or to the police. And so they might be scared to be honest about some of the things that they're going through. Also, for some of our youth, they might have the perception that there's not enough services available for everyone. And so they might have this feeling of, well, my problems aren't that bad, so I'm going to let people who have it worse than me access these services, which is a very graceful and selfless way of thinking. But I like to tell our youth that like trauma is not a contest, and there's no one traumatic experience that is better or worse than another, and that everybody who's been through difficult things deserves to have those needs met. So we really try our hardest to help our youth overcome these barriers. So our staff are really good at trying to explain the benefits of therapy to our youth, or to even help them understand like what therapy can offer for them. And we've had a few instances where youth that we have had come to our services are not old enough to consent for care on their own. And we've done our best to continue working with them and try to keep them stable and getting their needs met until they are able to consent for that care on their own.
Yeah, when you were talking a little bit about how some of those youth want to just sit out on that bystander kind of effect of, mm-hmm. It's really important that whether it's our staff, other youth, anyone who's interacting with our, folks here at the center, know that we're all kind of in the same boat when it comes down to the end of things. And so one of the great ways we do that is through some of our group therapy models. And I don't know, Sam, if you want to talk a little bit about that and how we've integrated art therapy into a lot of the work we do with our youth.
Sure. I love doing groups. It's not something that I thought I was going to be doing when I first became a therapist, but it's something that I really love and have really enjoyed doing. And doing group therapy or providing these kind of drop-in groups to our youth is a great way for us to expose youth to some of the benefits of therapy before they get into a room with me one-on-one, which might be a little scarier for them. And so what I try to do as a therapist is, again, this meeting them where they're at and trying to help them find a way to connect with some of the coping skills and strategies or ideas that I'm trying to share. And so we've had some really amazing groups over the years. For about a year, we did a hip hop therapy group where we kind of used the lyrics of music to kind of connect with our own personal life experiences and kind of talk about some of the challenges that we were facing. And that was really popular for a while. We've done a Harry Potter therapy group, which is really fun. And just a way, again, to connect youth with something they already know, right? That we can watch a clip of something that happened in a Harry Potter movie, and they can say, oh, that's similar to an experience that I've had. And we can watch the characters cope or not cope with their situation, and talk about what did they do well or what could you do differently. We've also had like a superhero therapy group where we integrated a lot of stuff from like the Marvel Cinematic Universe into learning really good coping skills and strategies. And then I've been really fortunate to be able to work with Deb Binkin, our office manager, who's an artist in her own right. And she has been doing art journaling groups. And that has been really fun, and the kids really connected with that. So we're super excited that we're going to have an art therapy intern joining us next month, and she'll be with us for a year. And so we are just thrilled that we're going to be able to kind of expand some of the art therapy offerings that our youth have really connected to and have really found ways of healing and coping. And even now that we're in telehealth and we're not really able to do the groups anymore because I'm not in the building, I still, even just yesterday, had a youth tell me, well, as soon as I'm done, I'm going to work in my art journal. And that's, you know, something that I need to do for tonight to take care of myself. So even though it's been a few months since we've been in the art studio doing that sort of group together, some of these things really stick with the youth and really help them to carry some of these important ideas and concepts into their daily life.
Yes. All right. This is all great stuff. We're going to take a moment here just to remind everybody who's watching, if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the comments section here, and we will try and get to them as we can. Let's we'll take a moment here just to hit up on some of these. So we'll go back to that 30,000 foot level. Drew asks, hi, thanks for doing this. Just joined in. I was wondering how common mental illness is in homeless youth.
Sure. So I think we have a couple slides on this. I don't know if you want to throw them up there if you're able to. But one of the things that we see in homeless youth is that at least 84% of youth ages 18 to 24, which is a large portion of the population that we serve, 84% of them meet criteria for at least one psychiatric disorder. And so what I've done on this chart is try to demonstrate the difference that we see in the rate of certain mental health issues in youth that are experiencing homelessness compared to the general population, so youth that are not experiencing homelessness. And what you'll see is there's a significant difference. We see that, you know, over 50% of youth experiencing homelessness in this age range experience depression compared to less than 15% of youth in the general population. So again, with anxiety, over 30% of youth who are homeless meet the criteria for an anxiety disorder compared to, again, less than 15% of youth who do not experience homelessness. And then conduct disorders. So this is, we're talking about behavioral issues that we might see in our youth. We see that again at about 20% in the youth that experience homelessness compared to, I mean, less than 10% in the general population. So all of these kind of risk factors, kind of even going back to what Toby talked about LGBTQ youth and like all these other mitigating factors that might lead to a youth becoming homeless, like have a really profound impact on their mental health and lead to those higher rates that we see.
Yeah, and this next question is a really good one. It leads kind of right into where you're going with that. So Mary asks, many people are convinced that many homeless youth are mentally ill. Would you discuss the types of mental illnesses you encounter and whether they are situational problems or serious long-term mental illness?
Sure. So I would say the most common diagnoses that I make in my practice are mood disorders. And so that includes depression and bipolar disorders, anxiety, and PTSD. Which is post-traumatic stress disorder. And so those are probably, like I said, the most common diagnoses that I make. And for a lot of those, I mean, when we're talking about, is it situational or is it long-term? There are a lot of things that youth face when they're homeless that if you heard their stories or heard what they've gone through, you'd say, well, no wonder you have these feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, worthlessness, right? Which are some of the big feelings that come up for folks who experience depression. And so for some of these youth, it is sort of, what we call acute or even an adjustment disorder type of diagnosis, in that once they are stably housed and once they are in, having a job and feel secure with their life, that those symptoms might not be as prevalent. For other youth, it's things that they might see on and off throughout their life, that when things are really stressful for them, these symptoms will kind of rear up. But then when they're stable again, they're able to be more stable with their mental health as well. As far as post-traumatic stress, a lot of these youth might still be in the situations that are causing them stress. And so that can be abusive relationships. It could be, the stress that comes from having to engage in sex work or in other types of trafficking type of situations that might be happening to them. There's a lot of traumatic things that we can't sit and address that trauma in therapy while you're necessarily still in that traumatic situation. So then the focus is on stabilizing you and helping you cope with the situation that you're in until you can get out of that situation. And then we can start to process some of the things that you're going through. So there are other more significant diagnoses that we see. So the age range that we serve is pretty much the prime age range for what we call first episode psychosis. So folks who are likely to develop a disorder like schizophrenia are likely to see the first episode of that when they're in their late teens or early 20s. So we do see that sometimes. We also sometimes will see psychotic symptoms that are related to substance use. And in that case, once the substance use has decreased or subsided, those psychotic symptoms go away. But we're fortunate that we live in a community like Des Moines that has a lot of different resources for young people who are experiencing some of those more severe diagnoses, so that we can connect them with those services and ensure their safety. And also help to educate them on what they're experiencing and what their options are for treatment, so that they can continue to be successful. So again, solving the homelessness problem for that person, putting them in housing doesn't solve everything, but it gets them on the right track to help support long-term healing is what it does. So, but again, most of what we do on the front lines is that lower level of the pyramids, those bottom two levels of the pyramids, those meeting those very basic needs. So that, hope that answers the question that Mary had.
Oh yeah. Yeah. When you talk about PTSD, I think there's a pretty common misconception out there too, that, this is only something that someone who lives in war-torn environments, or, someone who's a veteran is experiencing. And
Right.
that is right here at home, and, the folks that are coming through our center. And so it is, it's important to keep in mind that that's something that is still being triggered in their daily lives too.
And what we talk about a lot with the young people that we see is something called ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences. And so those are things like having experienced physical abuse or emotional abuse, or physical or emotional neglect in childhood, living with a parent or a caregiver who was using substances, or who had a mental illness, or who went to prison. Or experiencing sexual abuse in childhood, or sexual assault as they get older. So all of those things that happen, 0 to 18, before most of those youth get to us, those are all things that are contributing to that traumatic stress that they experience. And we do, people think that we're in the middle of Iowa, we're in flyover country, Iowa nice, all these good things happen, but we have gangs in Des Moines, and we have youth that grew up in areas where they were affected by gang activity and being either gang involved or just being affected by things that were happening in their neighborhood. And they've been exposed to things that I know I certainly, living in my suburban home growing up, like, was not exposed to. And so you're right, a lot of people associate post-traumatic stress with being in a war zone, but for some folks growing up in a neighborhood with high gang activity and other criminal activity going on, it can feel like a war zone. Or growing up in a home where you have a parent and you never know if you're going to encounter them drunk or sober, and how you need to act or behave when they're around, that can feel like a war zone. And so I think you're right. It is a common misconception people have, but that's why, again, I always tell our youth, trauma is not a contest. And, just because you haven't been in a war zone doesn't mean that you haven't had experiences that have affected you profoundly. And it doesn't mean you're broken, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It means that you are resilient and you lived through it, and the coping skills that you had then might not be helping you anymore. And so we need to find new ones. And that's really a majority of the work that I do, is helping youth access the resiliency skills and tools that they've developed over their life in new and different ways. And it's really exciting to see it kind of click for them and say, oh, I already know how to do this. I just have to apply it differently.
Like that one youth who needed to do their art journal. Like that coping skill that you're teaching them pays dividends.
Yeah, for sure. It's all about, I say it's like planting a seed, and I never know if I'm going to see the blossom or see the flower that comes. But at the very least, I can plant that seed, and maybe someday down the line, I'll hear about it. But I think that's a lot of what we do at IHYC, is planting those seeds. And we might never see the blossom, and we might never see the fruit come in. But that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that we're giving them those tools that hopefully they'll continue to use into adulthood.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for giving us so many great questions here. We'll go ahead and close it out with one that might be affecting some folks at home right now. So we've got Kaylee here. She says, hey, I'm a teacher. I know a lot of the students I serve are under a lot of stress they may not be accustomed to with COVID-19. So what are some good coping mechanisms that parents can try at home or in school to reinforce with our kids?
That's a really great question. So one of the biggest things that we can do as adults when we have children in our lives is, first of all, answering their questions in a way that they can understand and reassure them of their safety. And by doing that, also offering, again, that safe space for them to come to you with their questions and concerns, because a lot of things are changing and are very uncertain in their life right now. Some kids are going back to school in person, some are starting online, some are doing a mixture of both, some are starting online and not sure if they're going to go back to school in person. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and they may have a lot of questions. And so it's important that the adults, the trusted adults in their life, can give them answers that reassure them. And again, with all this uncertainty, one of the best things that parents and teachers can do is really provide structure for youth and give them something to depend on, something that they know is going to happen. Because with so much uncertainty up in the air, they really are going to cling to that structure to help them get through the days. Really keep up with your regular routines as much as possible. Spend time at home with your child doing meaningful activities like reading together, exercising, playing board games. And one of the best things that parents can do is really be a role model. So take breaks, get lots of sleep, exercise, eat well, connect with people in a way that you and your family have determined is the safest way for you guys to connect with other people. Because kids are going to do what they see the adults in their life doing. So if we can provide that role model for them, they'll kind of take those behaviors to heart and do those as well. And while we're doing that, try to limit their exposure to news stories, especially very young children, might misinterpret things that they hear on the news. They might be scared about things that they don't quite understand. And so it can be really important to limit their exposure to those things so that they're not carrying around these worries and fears inside that are causing them a lot of extra stress. But again, by answering their questions and reassuring them, hopefully you'll also be providing that safe space for them to come to you with those fears and allow you to give them that reassurance.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sam. It has been a pleasure having you on tonight, and you have had so much great insight into everything here.
Yep.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right, well, we're going to close out the night here. And as we always do, we try and have a little bit of a challenge for our campers. So, Toby, can you fill in folks at home? What is our challenge tonight?
Sure. So tonight's challenge is just to see if you can come together, whatever your family unit looks like, sit down, watch some of these videos about our agency and about the work and the programs that we do here at IHYC together. Most of the videos are pretty short, 7 to 10 minutes. So watch 3 or 4 of them, then sit down and kind of have a conversation around what did you learn. And then kind of the challenge is, what are the deeper, meaningful ways can you connect with the services that we provide to help homeless youth even after Reggie Sleep Out? So can you create a meaningful impact around a food drive or some type of warm clothing donation or hats or gloves? There's just so many different ways that your family can interact in a positive manner to create change for the youth that we work with. And so this challenge is really more longer term. So it's watch some of the videos as a group and then come up with a kind of a strategy or game plan on how your next step of providing support and assistance for homeless youth here in Des Moines.
Yeah, and you can find all that information too if you're interested in getting more involved here at iowahomelessyouth.org. There's plenty of ways, whether it's volunteering, holding some kind of donation drive, or whatever else you and your friends, family, or youth group or whatever can come up with. So thank you so much for all of you who are participating and have participated thus far. Looking forward to another great weekend full of Reggie Sleep Out here. And there's still time if you want to sign up. So registration will close tomorrow at the end of the day, Friday, September 11th. So if you want to get signed up, it's not too late. We are going to be here again tomorrow at 7 and Saturday and Sunday. So be sure to join us again. And coming up here at 7 o'clock, we've got our YSS Let's Talk as well. So very, very excited to continue to jump right back into things this weekend. And we are going to just sign off for tonight. Anything else you guys want to add before we close it out?
Just want to say you guys are doing a great job. It's been a real pleasure tuning into you guys every night and see what everyone has to say and get everybody's different viewpoints. It's been awesome.
Thanks, Sam, and thanks for everyone for tuning in.
All righty. Everyone have a great night.